We have now officially reached the longest government shutdown in history, and we're going to talk about it today and how it is affecting the stock market because that is what we're focused on here on this channel. So I'm going to give you a brief update of what's actually going on, but then we're going to jump into the chart so you're prepared for the remainder of the week and going into supposedly a bullish November. So with any point in time, this government can just be uplifted, right? It could drive the market down, and the next thing you know, it's lifted and we're back into normal uptrend for a bullish November into the Santa Claus rally into the end of the year. So we have a little bit of selling, a little bit of panic, a little bit of fear in the market right now. So I want to show you on the charts, but without further ado, let's jump into it. If you get that like button, subscribe button, if you are a returning listener, if you have not done so, if you're new here, welcome to the channel. My name is Dr. B. You can follow my socials and check out more about myself on all the other videos and on my social platforms. All right. So we're using AI here. I'm going to use Grok, whether you use ChatGPT or anything like that. And all I asked it was give me the details of the current government shutdown. Why belabor the point if we've got tools to use, okay? So I'm not going to read all of this here. You're more than welcome to screenshot it or ask your respective AI agent or do your own due diligence. But in summary, what has happened, the Congress failed to enact FY 2026 funding before the prior year expired on September 30th. The core dispute, Democrats demand a multi-year extension of Affordable Care Act premium subsidies set to expire at the end of this year, which keep insurance affordable for roughly 20 million Americans. The House has passed a clean CR 15 times to fund, so on and so forth. But I'm not going to jump into who's to blame. This is not a political channel. This is not to go into politics. I know a very strong opinion people are on these channels and on these public platforms. It's like, you need to have a side. But all I want to put into presentation today is what's actually going on that's creating the fear in the markets. Okay. But when there's fear, there's opportunity. And unfortunately, it's on behalf, because I do have a soul. I am a man of God. I am spiritual in nature. So you see this right here. You see federal workers furloughed, no pay, no work. Right? You see people getting laid off before the holidays. National parks and museums and monuments are gated, right? There's no federal workers able to man the stations there. FDA food inspection delays. Head Start, you got 58,000 kids in 140 centers lost slots, right? We've got women and infants. It's just SNAP benefits crisis. And whatever you believe, whether people should, be able to work and pay for their stuff or they're taking advantage of these benefits, right? There are people that are following the rules and doing it the right way. And unfortunately, they need those things, or fortunately, they need those things to get them over the hump. So you have travel chaos starting this Friday, transportation, 10% air capacity cuts. You've got flights being delayed and canceled, and going into the holidays, you got troops got their checks, right? Their next paycheck is coming up in a couple of weeks, economic toll, path to reopening, bipartisan Senate talks, and so on and so forth. All right. So like I said, I was not going to read this entire thing here, but I just wanted to show you the sentiment that is on the market. So what I like to do from a fundamental stance is gather a sentiment. What's the feeling? What's the emotion around the entire economy in the world that is pressing down potentially on the market where it can't get that rally like it needs to at this current time? Okay. So let's jump on the charts and get ready and show you on the charts how that has affected the overall market today. All right. So what we charted, okay, which is why I believe personally good news is coming, right? And this will be settled. We'll be right back to all-time highs, right? Is because we have tested a previous level of support. So for those of you that are coming on here and, you saw the title and, you didn't know it was stocks or whatnot, I just want to show you how the charts can also tell a story. Okay. I'm on a 4-hour time frame here on the S&P 500. Okay. So when you see red in the markets, or when you see intraday, what happened today was up, and then what happened at the end of the market, it all sold off. No, it's technically still holding. Okay. So we need to watch this area because it's very critical for the market to hold this area throughout the remainder of the week. All right. Because this is a previous resistance area here that we see right at this 674 level. Okay. We broke above, and what the stock market does is what we call retests that previous all-time high resistance. So this is a natural 2 to 2.5% pullback. Okay, right there is 2.5%, which is normal. And buyers stepped in today. But guess what? The buyers could not continue through the highs and go back to all-time highs just yet. So what they're going to do is typically we like to what we call trap short sellers. So these are traps that are being set as it goes higher, comes lower, goes higher, comes lower, but it's consolidating in what we call a bull flag, at least for now. And it could trap short sellers, people that are wanting to continue to short the market into a support zone and then squeeze them out like that. Okay. And if that coincides with positive news at some point this week or into the weekend, then we are going to absolutely squeeze back to all-time highs like that. All right. And then the November rally into December continues. Okay. So be on watch for this 674 level on the S&P 500 to continue to hold. If you are a futures person, okay, it's sitting right at 6,800. All right. So that is a psychological level, round even numbers that the stocks like to gravitate towards. And this is a trap, a bear trap right here. All right. So traps are set in the market to get people down in an area so they can find liquidity. Okay. And that's a bear trap. So that means that everyone that entered puts or shorted down into this area got trapped right back above, reclaim that area and squeeze them out right back above 68.10. Okay. So without further ado, we've got a break and a retest somewhat right here. So if we can hold 6,800 and reclaim and continue to hold 68.12 on the ES futures, then that is 675 on SPY. All right. And that will allow this to potentially happen. Right. So be on watch. I know it was a little bit of a fake out today for those that, maybe entered late or didn't take their profits, which was right here. Okay, we gotta be mindful that the market in the short term is still making lower highs, lower highs, lower highs. And then this was kind of what we call it a soft lower high because we made a firm lower low. Firm lower low is that we saw extreme buyers step back in this area versus these little pushes up and little wicks. And then we had sellers. This is where the buyer area, you can see that they step back in pretty heavily. So this is roughly a firm lower high as for right now. So this whole zone, there's buyers sitting. Okay. If I turn on my volume profile here, you can see how much volume of buyers are sitting in this zone, right? So if we get back above this area, this is a low volume area, is trying to get back to this 6,900. Okay. Round even psychological levels. That would be on SPY roughly around 686. Okay. So you've got this zone right here that SPY is trying to navigate through right there. Okay. So 675 to just say 685. All right. So I just want to point that out just because the end of the market kind of showed a little bit of selling pressure. And, I've got to even watch it to make sure that we don't blast through it. All right. Because we got to be prepared to react either way, which I don't suspect to happen. I think buyers are going to try to hold this up because we're still in a bull market. But if we blast through that area, right, with some negative news or something like that, it could get pretty ugly, right, down into these lower levels. We got 663, which would probably come into play. And then we got 667. Okay. 663, 667, right? Those levels into that next zone right there. All right. So I don't suspect that to happen, especially with NVIDIA earnings coming up with all the positive earnings that were really, really good. But just wanted to showcase that on Qs. Where would it be? Because I know a lot of folks trade QQQ. All right. This will be roughly around 612 to 615. Okay, 612 to 615, a little bit of wider range. As you can see, Qs didn't really get underneath that previous high as tech stocks continue to be strong. So QQQ didn't really sell off to an equal low. It sold off at the end of the day, or I would say profit taking to the end of the day, but this could be a trap, right? So pop down, come back up, hold right here, and then squeeze if we have some positive news. All right. So I will watch these equal lows, ideally to retest, or just being a little bit more patient to see if we build off of here, because it's very, very volatile in here. We are in a different range. Okay. We're in a different range. We've got this range up here of consolidation, and then we've got this range right here. Okay. So you can see a little bit better right there is that we're in this kind of consolidation range between 626 and 616. So about a $10 range on either side. If we break out of this yellow zone one way or the other, the floodgates are going to open one way or the other. Okay. So I think the market's just waiting on this government shutdown, waiting to conceptualize all this data that's being delayed and reported. So there is QQQ, IWM. I'm just going to touch on the indices. I'm not going to go through. I may touch on NVIDIA because NVIDIA kind of, there's some concerns with folks on NVIDIA of why it rejected so hard at the end of the day. But IWM holding on very, very strong here, but also in somewhat of a channel. So from 241 to 246, right? 241 to 246. So again, if you want to draw this channel right there, I'll draw it in yellow. Draw that channel right there, and you can see at the top end, bottom end, and if it starts building, that is a strong buyer candle there. And if I turn on my moving averages on a daily, it's sitting right underneath the daily 20 and right on top of the daily 50. So it's in between two moving averages. One way or the other, it's either going to come back to this one and fail it, or it's going to break back above and go. So watch for this on your charts, for it to cleanly break, because it gets kind of, interesting up in here. As you can see, when it comes out of here, all right, there are some traps up at the top right there, back down in the channel right there, back down in the channel. All right. So be careful up in there, trying to take it up into this daily 20 at 246. All right. So IWM, great move today, but what do we see in this moving average range? All right. SMH, the semiconductor ETF, which everyone's concerned or wondering what's going on with the semis, right? AMD, NVIDIA, so on and so forth, AVGO. Okay. Semis, again, in this range, okay? Trying to build and break out of its strong day-to-day from the semis, right? And then we had that previous resistance, support, turn resistance back underneath into this channel. So I would say they would look more like this, okay? More like this right now, because that candle closed back underneath that range. All right. So we're in this channel. See if it can break out of that box in some form or fashion, or either just trade the box, trade the range until it breaks out of one way or the other. All right. But semis still strong, especially coming into a strong AMD and NVIDIA earnings coming up in a couple of weeks. All right. Last one, like I promised, I'll touch on the video of some ideas, and Palantir is just sitting there. I'll touch on the video, okay? NVIDIA is in the box, okay? It looks almost like every other thing I just shared, okay? But NVIDIA is still showing some strong sellers stepping in underneath this 201.50, ideally underneath this 203 now, okay? So be careful on NVIDIA that it may want to flush all the way back down to this 185. Okay. If the market just can't recover and we show a little bit of weakness, and, people are just like, man, that was a hard rejection right there. I don't know if I'm ready to take NVIDIA up, because my risk to reward is just, I tried to take it up today and it couldn't continue with the market. The market was very strong today. Right. And NVIDIA just still got stuck underneath this 203. So does NVIDIA stay underneath this 200 now and start failing that, and we just roll over, and then we start opening up the floodgates underneath, right? There is a little gap underneath there. So watch that 195 on NVIDIA tomorrow, right? At the time of this recording, that'll be Thursday, to see if we can build, but I don't necessarily like that big rejection. There's still weakness on NVIDIA, so NVIDIA could provide some value potentially tomorrow if it breaks underneath this 194, 195 area. All right. So break underneath, retest it. It would look something like this, which I'm not a big fan of breakdown trades. All right. Personally, but I will look for it. Okay. And then it would continue something like that. Very similar to what happened here. You see that? It got underneath the zone, popped up, couldn't go, and then we fail and go, right? Could happen the same way lower down into this 190 is the first level, and then we got 185, right? So it might want 190. Watch out for the next level at 190, okay? Cool. So NVIDIA, and I like to say that because we have a lot of NVIDIA bulls out there that are like, man, this thing's going back to 212. This thing's going back to 210. I get that. It is. It will, right? But where's the bottom right now? Be careful, be mindful of the charts so you don't have short dated contracts and you got absolutely slammed if you're holding those contracts too long, thinking it's going to just break all the way back up here to 210. You still have overhead resistance at 203. All right. So thank y'all so much. Peace, love, and blessings to you. 2 videos a day right now at the time of this recording, and we'll see how we progress throughout the remainder of the week. Right. It is a little tough, week, in my opinion, to start off November of trying to get a read on the market because November is typically bullish, but doing the best we can and trying to keep you guys updated. All right. Until next time, peace, love, and blessings. Talk to you soon.